Okay, guys. So basically, what we really wanted to do here, um, exactly, I like what Sarah is saying, that we really need to create a safe environment for the company. We really wanted to really ensure protection for information assets. How you can ensure protection for information assets? By reducing the risk of cyber attacks. Okay, because again, what's happening in the last decades or last 2 decades, when since the internet become very popular, is we moved our really physical assets to be online assets. Okay, so your bank account, you can reach it now online, you can modify, you can transfer, everything is online. Okay, your government documents, it used to be physically, you need only to go to the government place to do things physically. Now most of your government affairs is already located on a website. Okay, even Hajj and Umrah there in Saudi Arabia, now it's been digitalized. So a lot of documents, you can find it in Tawakkalna as an application. Okay, maybe also our oil and gas industry, they are moved through so many generations, and now we are in generation number 4 that we already talked about. That generation is based on IoT and cloud solutions and internet. So we moved all our physical assets to online assets. And that's why I said before, we living in the digital economy or information economy or information era. We live in this time, and this time means it opens the doors that everything is online. And because everything is online, we have a great opportunity of sharing information, very easy to access, very easy to access data all over the world, very easy to do day-to-day tasks. If you go to any organization in the morning and you sit, okay, the first thing they will give you a computer, and this computer is equipped with some application, and they will ask you to do your work, whether you are working in sales or whether you are working HR or whether you are working in finance, you will have some application to do. So most of our system now is based on computers and based on internet, and this is open the door for another huge risk of cybersecurity. So we really, our jobs is to reduce the risk of cybersecurity. I cannot emphasize enough that this is the main thing that you said you should say in interview. I'm here to minimize the risk of cybersecurity. Okay, I'm here to reduce the risk of cybersecurity. We are relying on our information assets to go and do day-to-day basis operations. And if we have issues or disruptions with our information assets, we will not be able to do this. Okay, guys? So far, so good? Anyone have any, if you guys have any better, explanation, just go for it. Okay, so how can we really ensure cybersecurity? Okay, and ensuring cybersecurity, as I mentioned before, and I keep mentioning, okay, you need to implement 5 pillars, and you need to ensure 5 pillars to ensure cybersecurity or to achieve cybersecurity. You need to implement confidentiality for your data, integrity for your data, and availability and authenticity, and also lastly, non-repudiation. So this is the 5 pillars. Okay. And then we looked at, we looked also, we don't really need to just focus on data. We really need to focus on IT systems, because IT system is not only all about data. We have also application running. We need to ensure the application security. We need to ensure the hardware security. We need to ensure the communication link and communication service security. So you really, the attacker can come from anywhere. So you need to ensure network security. So this is what cybersecurity is all about. So you need to do a lot of stuff. Okay. So how can I implement this a lot of stuff? Okay. And then here is what NIST as a standard come to recommend to you. Okay. Follow a proper standard to protect your assets. And that is why NIST cyber security framework is all about. It's saying, okay, in order to secure your data in a proper way, in order to handle a new threats or a new risk for your data, you need to follow these pillars, or you need to follow these core functions. So the 4 core function, we talked about it before, and I keep talking about it because I wanted you guys in an interview, and until now, in my interview, when I talk to someone, I talk about these 5 pillars, because I talk about, You need first of all, you need to understand the business environment. Are you working in bank? What is the most important assets here? Okay, are you working in oil and gas industry? What is the most important? Are you working in government institution? What is really important here? So this is where we start with identification core function, which is the first thing, which is I really like to put first, is business environment. You understand your business. You understand what is you really doing, and it's important to understand because you are trying to help them to achieve what they're doing. Basically, if they are oil and gas, how can I really help you guys to achieve what you want to do? You wanted to be the biggest, exporter for oil and gas in the Middle East. Okay, how can I really ensure this to happen? So you really need to understand the business environment. You need to understand the vision, objective, and their day-to-day goals, what systems they are relying on it. And that takes you to the second stage here. So the first stage, understand the business environment, understand the business model, what they are trying to do, and then understand what systems they need day-to-day to achieve their objectives. Because most of the companies, they are having some systems that they're using in a day-to-day basis, okay? And if this system is disrupted, or this system is not available, it's gonna be a huge mess. That's what takes us from business environment to assets management. And assets management is basically you need to know, understand, and find out about what assets exist in the organization. What is communication links which exists in this organization? What is application running on this application and on this organization? What hardware and software operating system they are using? Okay, because eventually you need to protect all these components in order to protect your information systems. And that's will finally allow you to understand, to really protect your organization. So asset management, guys, here, it's all about finding your assets, okay? And the one way to do it is basically to do asset inventory. And we showed you some couple of tools to do asset inventory. And you can do asset inventory manual way if you don't have a big organization, or digitalized way, or with using automated tools like Nmap and so on and so forth. So this is asset management. Okay, some specific tools in the market, it will help you also to do asset inventory. SolarWinds, they have their own asset inventory system. HP, they have their own asset inventory system. So many things. Okay, guys. So this is asset management. Now you are in the right way. You understand the business. Okay, you understand what is important for the business. You understand the criticality of this system for the business, and you understand what you have. Okay, so once you understand what you have, now you need to understand, okay, where is the attacker can attack me? Okay, from where exactly the attacker can get to me and really cause me harm. And that is why risk assessment, before we talk about risk assessment, we talk about governance. And governance, as I mentioned to you, is basically about, how to align your security initiative with your business initiative. And that could not happen if you don't understand the business and the asset management. So you need to understand what is the assets they have and what also the business environment in order to do governance. And governance, as I mentioned to you, okay, say now I know what is the business are going. Okay, how can I really help them by implementing security to get where they wanted to go? And this is in a very simple way governance. And also governance are covering a very important part, which is basically policies. What policies inside this organization should be implemented to ensure security of data? So if you don't understand the business, if you are not sitting and interviewing the CEO, the C-suite level, you will not be able to write the right policies. So you need to understand, okay, what is allowed in this organization and what is not allowed in this organization? What is the acceptable use policy? How can we really implement security within this organization? You get this governance, you get this views from the top management. So this is also something you really need to look at. Okay, and here, the last thing over here is basically saying risk assessment. And then risk assessment in a very simple way is a way to identify risk within your assets. Okay, so you need to understand what is the vulnerabilities, what is the criticality of the assets, what is the impact if you use the assets, and what is the threats that exist and can really pose a dangerous to confidentiality and integrity in assets. And you start to look at different way to do risk assessment. I'm gonna give you maybe in Tuesday 10 minutes or 15 minutes talking about different risk assessment methodology. We have something called qualitative and quantitative. I'm sure that you read about it on the website. We didn't cover it really here in deep details because on the lecture of risk, I just wanted to highlight what is risk and what is we mean by probability or likelihood of a threat to exploit vulnerability, but we didn't really go in deep details to talk about what is the different risk assessment methodology. So on Tuesday, remind me guys to just go through the qualitative and quantitative because this is an important way to look at things. And once we already identify the risk within the organization, we will go ahead and do risk management. And risk management, as you can see, is basically how to manage this risk. And we said there is so many ways to manage your risk. We can reduce the risk, mitigate the risk, or avoid risk. Exactly. Ustaz Shaza is saying that in risk assessment based on CVE, I will take decision to reduce the risk. Very good point that Shaza is mentioning here, that we really need to communicate the risk. So we just wanted to show you a quick diagram here, guys. This is what we actually doing in the big pictures. This is the big picture for any organization when they wanted to apply cybersecurity. So they identify the assets, okay? They analyze vulnerability and threats. We already talked about how analyzing vulnerabilities can be done. Okay, it can be done in so many ways. You can really read about what is Microsoft are releasing. For example, this Tuesday, every month they have second week Tuesday updates. So they give you a list of the updates of what is really critical updates and what is security. So just by reading, you can understand what system you have and what is critical update you need and start to install it. Some of the tools allow you to analyze vulnerability in an automated way, which is basically like Nessus. Nmap also does have script that will allow you to to search for vulnerabilities. And we talked about threats in so many occasions, and the threats basically, as I mentioned, is any violence against your system, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And threats usually use threat vectors to exploit vulnerabilities. So this is what we talked about. And there is an important topic we will talk about next week or the week after about threat modeling, how we do threat modeling for systems, what is the attacking point, what is the entry point for the systems. We look at Microsoft. They have a very famous threat modeling called Stride, and they have also another one called Dread. So this is also a threat modeling diagrams. We'll look at how we will use a threat modeling to really try to find out what is the threats to an organization. Also, we talked about threat actors and who is the threat actors that we really need to develop and worry about. And again, threat actor, why I really need to understand threat actor, guys, because depend about the organization, you really need to worry about who is going to be after you. Okay, and accordingly, you will be implementing your security controls accordingly. Like I will give you an example. If you are a company like Aramco, for example, okay, or if you are a company like a Petro Rabigh, which is very big companies, okay, they are almost one company is as big as a city, okay. So one of these companies, okay, they are working in this field of oil and gas. They know they are not targeted by only a normal group of hackers. They know that they are not going to be a target for script kiddie. They know they are going to be targeted by very well organized groups because this is where they are very technical savvy. They know about this SCADA system. They wanted to make money because Aramco is big company and they know they have money. So basically, in order for Aramco to really take care of their security, they really need to prepare their systems and their environment for these kind of guys. Okay, not this kind of guys. If you are implementing your security and you don't understand your opponents, then you are in a big trouble. And not only just normal big group of hackers, you can also have nation states hackers. like, Saudi Arabia does have a lot of enemies in the regions. So you can be targeted by nation states. And one of the attacks that happened in Aramco specifically, which is back in 2013, back 2012, is basically is designed and implemented by a nation state. It's not like a small attack. It's an attack that wiped 40 or 50,000 PCs in one day. So basically, if in order really to secure your network, you really need to think about your opponent, what capabilities they have, okay, what they can do. Okay, so now you build your controls and you build your system in a much advanced, secure way than normal someone who just started a small website. So understanding your opponents, understanding the adversary is very important, and that's why there is so many jobs right now. It's all about threat hunting, threat intelligence. Okay, it's just a job that's all your day long. Is you're looking for threats within your organization, and you try to identify these threats and try to really mitigate or protect your organization from these threats. This is becoming a job right now, because right now you are not waiting to be reactive. You don't wait for someone to attack you. You want to really to be proactive. You want to look for threats before it's emerging to be like a risk or to be compromising your network. So this is why there is a lot of, I would say, jobs right now is all about threats hunting and threat intelligence. Is basically is you wanted to be proactive and try to understand what threats out there. Okay, who's going to be really targeting you, and start to take action immediately. Okay, guys. So this is the part of assets. Identify assets, then analyze vulnerability and threats, and then this part, guys, is about developing recommendation. Is all about what? Is all about basically risk management. Okay, risk management. You're saying, you know what? We find this risk. This risk is high according to the CVE, according to equation I gave you before. This risk is high. Okay, so you really need to communicate this risk to the asset owner or to the organization back. Don't act by yourself in the risk. Like, it's not your job. Let the management knows about the risk, and let them say, you know what, we will accept the risk, we will avoid this risk, we will transfer the risk, or we will mitigate the risk. It is not your job to take an actions right away. It is your job to communicate the risk, to highlight what kind of risk is really has a high priority and what kind of risk it has a very low priority. So this is your job. Okay, once the management agreed about an action plan, they will call you. Okay, you know what? You find this risk and this risk and this risk. This is for us is acceptable. Okay, it will not impact us by really great means. Okay, but this risk specifically, we see it really has a huge impact on us. Okay, let's do something about it, or mitigate, or really reduce this risk. And this is once you've been called for mitigation, this is where you guys are really has a value, because this is, you've done all these jobs for the day that, okay, they say, okay, you know what, let's do something about it. Let's do something about it means they will allocate to you resources, budget, okay, and timeline to reduce this risk. And this is basically why sometimes, guys, we teach you about project management, BCP, business continuity planning. Business continuity planning, you will be called for when you are doing responding. Okay, when you doing responding, you need really to be part of it, because you need to create the BIA. The BIA is basically business impact analysis. Okay, business impact analysis. Who is doing business impact analysis? There is a job inside our cybersecurity realm or domain called GRC. Okay, if you are GRC, guys, mean you are someone who understand what is governance, what is risk, and what is compliance. So maybe you are you need to comply with certain regulation that you have a BCP plan, business continuity planning. Okay, so who's gonna do this in your organization? Who is gonna produce the BIA? Is gonna be the GRC guys. Okay, this is one thing. Also, as a cybersecurity, once you have the BIA, the BIA is a document that tells you exactly what is business impact when we have an incident. Okay, once you have this document, you will start to create 3 different documents, and these 3 different documents are really about 3 different other groups within the cybersecurity. So the BIA, we will have out of it incident response, IR, okay, and cybersecurity طبعا is very now active in this part of IR, incident response, how to handle incidents. And also it from the BIR, from the BIA, you need to drive disaster recovery. So what if your incident, we cannot contain the incidents because the damage is great, so you need to have a disaster recovery to really return to business after a disaster in the main site. And you need also from the BII, you will deliver something called business continuity, BC. Okay, business continuity is all about moving your data center or moving your main site to another alternative site, which is hot site. Okay, as a cybersecurity, the first part here, the non-technical part, I would say this is called the non-technical part. Why? Because you are using Excel sheets and you're interviewing people and you're looking for the risk, and maybe you are using vulnerability management, scanning and the stuff a little bit, okay? But this is all for the GRC guy, okay? So once he produced this, he started to say, okay, we need to prepare for incident response. This over here, incident response, it needs technical guys, okay? You need really to be prepared as a technical engineer and our technical incident response engineer. So this is why, inshallah, next course, which is gonna start after this week, we were showing you guys how to be an incident response and working as a SOC engineer. So this is incident response, okay? Also, if you're working with a DR and BC, cybersecurity is gonna implement the DR and the BC. So this is like a project, okay? In project, you really need to take care of networks, you really need to take care of security, you really need to take care of systems. So you would be as a, here in this specific area, there's something called cybersecurity engineer. The cybersecurity engineer is the one who install firewall, install, for example, intrusion detection system, install WAF, install antivirus end protections, and all this stuff. So you would, there is multiple rules, and in every single area there is a specific needs for cybersecurity. So, mashallah, there is a plenty of job, Naif, don't worry. Okay, but it's good questions. Okay, guys, sorry that's, I don't know where we are, but here, I think in communicating risk. So let the management tell you exactly what you need to do in order to mitigate the risk. Okay, so they will tell you, you know what, we see that we really need to mitigate this risk. And once they said that we really need to mitigate the risk, guys, I mentioned they will allocate for you budget, they will allocate for you time frame, and they will allocate for you also resources. Okay, and that's why I was explaining that I think some of the universities, when they teaching cybersecurity, they give you a whole full course about project management. Project management, you now are a cybersecurity engineer. You got communicated from the business and from the GRC guys that you have a risk that need to be mitigated. Okay, the business saying, okay, take these resources, so whether it's a budget, whether it's like a time frame, whether it's resources to mitigate. So you need now to really follow a project management methodology to really finish this project on or to mitigate the risk within a timeline, within resources, with allocated budget. So that's why some of my cybersecurity engineers, they really study really project management, because end of the day, why is project management is important? Because they wanted to mitigate the risk. In order to mitigate the risk, they wanted to do a small project. So maybe they will implement antivirus, okay, antivirus solution for the entire company. So you cannot just bring the antivirus solution and install it in one machine by one machine. This is not gonna work. You need to get like a full enterprise edition of this antivirus, have a management console installed, and then you start to really push the client to all the servers, okay, and then all the client of the antivirus to all your hosts or your all employees. You start to read the reports. You start to see if what is the protection policies that you're gonna use. Okay, so this is a project. So you need to really have the skills of understanding what is the project methodology is all about, and use some tools to help you with a project. So Microsoft project is one of the things that we used to do. Microsoft project, Gantt chart, it will help you also to do it. Maybe you also can use Primavera. This is an advanced way to look at projects. So there's so many tools out there to help you to implement a project. But you, end of the day, will be in a day-to-day basis responsible for one of the project. When you go, inshallah, and work in a company, you'll be responsible for a project. Okay, guys? So far, so good? Any questions? Okay. And the project in a very sense or initial thing is basically we implement the project to implement controls, and controls is all about, it's either gonna be physical controls, okay, or technical controls or administrative controls. Okay, guys? So far, so good. We talked about this long time ago.
Yes.
Okay, we talked about physical controls, technical controls, and managerial controls. So this is very easy to talk about, right? Because this is where the technicality is all about. This is where your technical details. You'll say, okay, you know what, in technical controls, we have so many categories of technical controls. We have preventive controls, we have detection controls, we have corrective controls, we have compensation controls. And in order really to protect your system, you need to implement all of them, by the way. So you cannot say I will implement preventive controls and I will be going back home and I'll be happy. Okay, no, in interviews you will ask, okay, what preventive control you will implement? What is the deductive controls you will implement? Okay, I was talking to someone yesterday and we were working in a project, and he said, okay, so this is regarding the preventive control. Did you think about the detection controls in the cloud? What kind of solution you will implement as a detection controls in the cloud? So they will ask you these questions. So you need to be really, really ready when you go for an interview when it comes to all of these controls. Okay, you will say, okay, you know what, I don't have a lot of experience, but you can at least talk about it. So in order to talk about it, you can say, okay, you know what, firewall is a great preventive controls because it can really tell me who is allowed to be as a traffic or monitoring the traffic, who is allowed and which is not allowed according to maybe certain policies or certain security policy. But in the same time, okay, if the traffic went inside our network and I wanted to detect if there's something suspicious happening on the upper layer, I can use a detection control like an IDS. IDS would be able to detect any anomalies. Okay, type what if I find that this certain traffic is really malicious? What can I do? And this is where the guys reactive controls or responding controls or corrective controls come to play. So corrective controls will be at that time, maybe I will create a signature of my IDS to block this traffic. Or maybe I will block this traffic from the firewall itself. Or maybe I will have a specific rules to block this specific IP address within my service provider. So this is called responding to an attack. And it's also a good, you have a scenario in your mind, because in one of the interviews that I have maybe recently, they ask me now, imagine we have an attack, okay? Someone is attacking us or someone is attacking a website. Tell us, okay, how are you gonna protect your assets here, okay? So they wanted to really to see how you think about cybersecurity. And again, I told them, okay, we're gonna implement different type of controls, physical controls, technical controls, and management controls. So for the management is the easy one. It's basically to train your users, to create the proper policies, to create the proper procedures, to follow the best standards when it comes to web securities. So this is the managerial. The physical is the location of your server and how you implement physical security in your data center, or if your data is in the cloud, so how you implement physical security and ensure physical security in the cloud. Also in the technical controls, I said I will implement preventive controls. So WAF, web application firewall, could be used to really block a lot of the attacks. Okay. Also, in order to rule the detections, I will be installing, there is a tools which is very common right now. It's called EDR, or endpoint detections systems, that is gonna take logs from your server and send it to a console, so someone can really see if there's something malicious happening in you. So this is detection control. Corrective controls. Okay, what happens if someone managed to take your server down? So you can say, okay, you know what? There is so many ways to do this. You can create multiple instances of your server, and you can use load balancing. So if one of the servers is down, you have another server, or you create something called high availability in cloud. So this is all, solutions. But again, the question here is not about your technical skills. The question here is about you wanted to really check how do you think about cybersecurity, and that's why I keep talking about cybersecurity risk and how to mitigate the risk, and I change the topics in every time we talk about it, because I wanted really you guys to be able to talk about it. Once they found you are capable really to talk about it, they will hire you. Why? Because if you understand the concept, you are a fresh graduate. Exactly, exactly what the Naif is saying. This is the cybersecurity mindset or mentality. Once you have the mentality, you can learn anything. Okay, all this new technology, it's just about tools that will give you a training for it, so you know how to really deal with the tools. But the most important thing is basically how you think about cybersecurity. Okay, guys. Then finally, if you guys allow me, this is the first stage. Second stage, recommendation and apply basic security controls is the last stage. Okay, guys, just wanted to mention something which is very important. Risk inside the organization is not something that you do one time, risk assessment and risk management, and you said, okay, I'm good. Okay, khalas, I'm done. I did my job, I applied controls. It's a continuous process. What we mean by continuous process, you need to do it over and over and over again. What we mean by this, risks are changing. What we mean, assets now, I used to have 5 servers, okay? My company grows, okay? So they decided to add 2 servers, okay? These 2 servers could be the potentially point of attacks, or could be the new risk or vulnerability inside my organization. So I finished the 5 servers, but there is 2 new servers. So I need really to go back to do the whole again cycle here, okay? One of these servers, okay, these 5 servers, okay, I installed a new application or a new service on top of it. Okay, now the risk profile for this company is changing. So the risk is changing. Why? Because my assets are changing. I'm adding new service, and I'm adding new application, and this application come full with vulnerability. So I really need to really do another risk assessment. So the risk assessment is periodic, or I would say monthly or quarterly procedures, and you always need to look at what have we added new. Okay, and some of the company, with every single major change in the environment, they do a risk assessment. For example, okay, I had before used Microsoft SQL. Okay, Microsoft SQL, I know the vulnerability, I know everything about it. Today, I figure out that Microsoft SQL is not really good for my application. I wanted to move to Oracle. Okay, Oracle database is completely different than Microsoft. The vulnerability is different. You know, the way to access the Microsoft to Oracle is different. So this is considered a major change. Major change will trigger a new risk assessment. Okay, guys? Not only risk assessment, in some companies that I work for, major change will require to do a penetration testing or ethical hacking. So what we mean that we get someone from outside, we say, okay, you know what, we changed our database. We need to see if you are able to do anything with the new changes here. Can you do SQL injection? Can you try to compromise this new database? So you need to really look at risk as a continuous process. And that's why when you see the books and you look at these cycles, guys, you will find it's a cycle which is basically is going to be like this. There is a feedback over here. So you develop a recommendation, and then you go back to identify assets, to look for the threats and vulnerability, and do develop recommendation, and finally communicate this again to the management. Okay. Okay. Also, assessment can be implemented on employees. I agree. I agree to this also recommendation, which is he said that we need to assess our employees. Okay, but again, our employees, they do have another procedures. Okay, guys, to look at them. And this is a good topic that you guys also Naif is opening, which is basically you need to manage personnel. They call this personnel or employees in all the life cycle of an employee. So if you, for example, hired someone, what can I do to make sure that I'm hiring the right candidate, specifically from cybersecurity perspective, not from hiring process perspective? So I need to carry background check. Okay, where is this guy used to work before? Can he give me a criminal record? Okay, I wanted to check his criminal record. Okay, did he involved in any digital crimes? Okay, so this is all is very common in the West. Okay, and even in Dubai right now, when you are applying for a new job, they will ask you, would you mind to go they will ask you before even the interview, we are gonna do a background check and a criminal check about you. So this is very very important before you hire someone. This is before you hire someone. Okay, guys? And also, once you hired someone, you really need to implement the IEEE. The IEEE is all about identification for this person, authentication, how he gonna authentication, or authorization and accountability. The most important thing is not really identification and authentication, because he's gonna be authenticated. He's gonna be in your system, okay? But the most important thing that we really wanted to really take care of it is authorization and accountability. We wanted really to implement the proper right authorization, and that's why it takes us to remember when we studied something called access control modules, the discretionary access control, mandatory access control, and rule access controls. This is exactly where this is all about. So according to the environment this guy is going to work for, if you are working in military, will implement authorization in one day away. If you're working in a relaxed environment, you will work with discretionary access control. If we work with a big environment with so many rules and hierarchy, we use rule-based access control. So this is all, guys, it should be very taken serious. And the most important principles that I will teach you in this area, and I wanted to you always remember, which is the golden principle. Apply the least privilege. The least privilege principle is all about giving this user enough permission to do his job only. Okay, so don't give him an extra small permission that he can do. Yani if he's not an administrator, don't give him an admin rights in anything. If he is supposed to read, exactly. This is, they called it, guys, I wanted you guys to remember, because in the exam, okay, or any exam of security, okay, that you will be invited to, the least privilege principle is gonna be there. I will just write it down here in the chat. Least privilege principle. This is 100% in any exam, in any interview. In any interviews, they will ask you. I was in the interview recently, okay, and the guy was saying, okay, let's say that I have a database, okay, and this database does have the customer data, okay, and let's say I have an application here, web application, and let's say that I have an administrator here or a developer who's working to develop this application. So this is maybe written in PHP, okay, and this is maybe a database, okay. Now his questions, shall I give the developer, okay, access to the database? Okay, I said, why the developer need an access to the database? We should actually only allow the application as a special account to access the database. You never give the developer access to the database because he was not supposed to see what is in the database. Whether the database is actually encrypted or no, he's not actually, he doesn't need it. So if he doesn't need it, we need to follow the principle of least privilege. So this is the answer for the question. See, the question is tricky. He wanted to really understand if you understand the concept of the least privilege. So the least privilege principle is very important, especially if we're applying authorization. And that's why I said in military, which is MAC access control, you need to give the user a clearance, like something called top secret, secret, all this clearance level. And you need to give the application also another label, or the files is another label. Okay, and they need to match each other, and they match. If he doesn't match the object here label, he will not be able to access. Okay, and with the least privilege guys in organization, you need to implement something called needs to know. Also principle. Needs to know is another principle, which is basically is going hand with hand with hand with least privilege. Okay, so I have Shaza here saying because hackers also breaks the authentication, not all the privilege are available to him. Okay, I will tell you the answer for this, Shaza. Okay, so the attacker, what they do usually, okay, they will try to really compromise this person because this is the weakest point in any system. Okay, any system that we have today, okay, the weakest point is not technology. The technology in matter of fact is very strong now. Okay, and there is AI is being implemented in so many new security tools that it make it even difficult for the attacker to really get around or bypass these controls. So they try to really compromise this user by phishing email, by tricking him to visit a website, which is then exploit his web browser, or maybe to give him a malicious application to install in his computers. So there is so many ways that we really, they are after the employees or after your personnel. Okay, so if you really take your authentication serious, okay, if you take your authorization serious, okay, the attacker will be very limited of what he can do because he has the least privilege. He cannot do much, okay? And that's why when the attacker, let's say this is the bad guy over here, the attacker compromise this guy over here, what the attacker will do, okay, the first thing, once he attack this, he will try to escalate his privilege. And this is why we have something called privilege escalation. Privilege escalation is basically is all about how I can compromise an administrator account. So you really cannot do much with these guys, especially if you give him the least privilege. If you give your user least privilege, I'm telling you, it's you making the attacker life much harder because now he need to really escalate his privilege. But if you give these guys relaxed permission, the attacker will be very happy because once he compromises it, he can use this privilege to do other stuff. Okay, so this is why there is a lot of companies right now, they do something called BAM, and the BAM in a very simple way, just to make it your life also easy to understand this new technology. BAM is called Privilege Access Management, and the Privilege Access Management is if you have an important user here, like an administrator, it will monitor every single thing this administrator is doing, and it will monitor also your end users. So this is going to be a system that's installed, and it's monitoring every administrator you have and what they do in a day-to-day basis. Why? Because they know that the attacker is after one of them. Okay, once he compromises one of them, he will start to do things like what? He can install application, and he can install a backdoors. So I wanted really to understand what is my administrator are doing. So they implemented for them a specific important tools. It's called BAM, Privilege Access Management. And Privilege Access Management is giving me, oh, this administrator has done this and this and this. Okay, this administrator really needs to install a file called netcat in the computers. Oh, this is really wrong. So now you have another tools within your organization to monitor what your administrators are doing. And this is exactly what you want to do. You want to monitor what your user doing. And this is part of the last thing that we talked about here is accountability. Accountability, you need to really to establish accountability so you can understand what is your user doing and you have a logs for it. So BAM solution and the identity access management solution is all about establishing accountability. But the most important thing, again, we go back again, is the least privilege and needs no thing. Sorry guys, it's messy here now. So I'm just trying to explain some concepts very quickly before we go for break. Okay, guys? Okay, so how to protect your system? I don't know, you guys wanted some rest or shall we go? Shall we keep going? I think it's also part of AUB, AUB, which is acceptable user policy, the least privilege. Yes, it should be. The AUB is more like a policy to tell you exactly what you should do and what you shouldn't do, or how to use your computer resources. This is exactly what is AUB is all about. But what I'm explaining here, guys, I'm explaining how they implement security or identity and access management within the organization. So this is the least privilege is one of the most important things when we look at when we talked about authorization. Okay, guys. So here, this is just a quick also introduction to remind you that's okay. In order to secure my system, I need to implement layering protection. Okay, and we'll talk about layering protection. And then you need to establish identity and access management. And you need also to do a lot of batching and updatings. And because our systems are not really secure by default, it contains a lot of bugs and a lot of vulnerabilities. And we look at also web and email security. Inshallah, when as I promise you guys, I will try to cover on Tuesday web application and email security, because this is a huge topic right now in the market. Okay, but before we go from here, I just wanted to show you. Okay, so this diagram over here, guys, is a little bit outdated. There was also a new tab here. It's called supply chain risk management. And the only thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that your vendor can open the doors for risk. So you really need to work with your vendor to mitigate the risk of supply chain. I just choose this article specifically today. It's not an article, it's just a small piece of information here. If you guys can see, this is specifically. So this is happened recently in 2021. The same attacks happened, okay? But it happened in 2015. So they found that Cisco router is infected by malicious firmware. Firmware is what, guys? Is basically is the software that runs in routers. Okay, so each router, in order to really operate and start to work and boot from the right image and start the right configuration and everything, and the flash and the memory management and stuff, it has something called firmware. So they found the vulnerability. The attacker managed to exploit this vulnerability, and they installed Sinful NOC. This is a malicious code. Okay, this malicious firmware allows a threat actor to gain backdoor access to the infrastructure device. So if you have an access to the routers, you have an access to everything within the network. Why? Because the routers is basically your gate to the internet and the gates to another network within your network. So if I'm infecting you with this malicious firmware, then I can really monitor your traffic, redirect your traffic, or doing even much worse, which is passive attacks, which is really eavesdropping in your traffic, which it creates trust issues. Now I have trust issues. Why? Because who was the vendor? Cisco. Okay, how many organizations are using Cisco? Thousands, or not, if not hundred thousands. Okay, end user realize that they need the vendor in the supply chain that can trust. Okay, and that's why the new NIST publication is talking about the supply chain of risk management. Why? Because there's this kind of attacks. If you wanted really to read about very interesting story about supply chain attacks, you can really read about SolarWinds. SolarWinds is one of the biggest, I would say, application management systems. Okay, they develop application to manage the entire infrastructure, and they had a very famous attacks last year. Okay, so read about SolarWinds attacks. It's very interesting story. It's all about supply chain attacks. Okay, so they know exactly where is the hardware is coming from. Okay, so you as a end user, you really need to trust the vendor. Okay, they also need to check and make sure that these very critical devices are not connected to the internet before security in place. What we mean by this, guys, you mean before you are attaching your router to the internet, you need to secure your router. You need to make sure that you install the latest patches and upgrade in your router. You really need to make sure that you implemented security, like for example, IEEE or Radius servers, or adding a username and password to your router. Because if your router is not secure and there is a firmware vulnerability, someone can exploit the router and cause a lot of harm. It's always useful to verify in some way that the hardware and the firmware inside that hardware are secure. Okay, guys, so this is the supply chain management as a part of risk management as well. So you really need to look at your suppliers and start to understand what is the vulnerabilities they have and what kind of batches they are releasing for this vulnerability, because you're relying on them. So if they are not secure, you also, as part of this chain, you will be not secure as well. So this is what we call supply chain. Okay, exactly. And even if you take a trusted vendor, it's not about trusted vendor only, Naif. It is because, you know, they give you these devices, you blindly trust them. Okay, but these devices is also not 100% secure. So the attacker now, they said, okay, why am I attacking one organization? This is how smart the attacker is getting. So now they say, okay, you know what? Why am I attacking one organization? Let's say that I'm attacking maybe Petrorabigh. Why am I attacking only Petrorabigh and spend a whole bunch of time and resources to really find a vulnerability here and take over this company? Okay, this company like Petrorabigh, and let's say Aramco, and let's say that you have another, Saudi gas company, Sabic. All of these guys are using one common hardware, which is basically Cisco. Okay, so if I attack Cisco, okay, Cisco as a service provider for all these devices, if I attack Cisco now, okay, I managed to find a vulnerability here. I exploited this vulnerability. It will give me in return access to all these devices. See, this is how really the attackers are really getting very, very sophisticated, especially if they are well-organized group. What they will do, they will attack the vendor himself. When they attack the vendor himself and find a vulnerability, then they can attack anyone who's using this. Let's say the same thing with Microsoft, okay? Why I will go to find one vulnerability here? If I found one vulnerability in Microsoft itself, I can target all these guys who's running Microsoft Windows 10 or Windows 11. So the attacker really getting really smarter than this, and that's why when you buy equipment, you really need to look at vendor who's taking security serious. Okay, otherwise you will be in a big trouble. Why you will be in a big trouble? Because if you buy something from them which is not secure and they are not taking security serious, then there is a high chances that you're gonna be exploited or you're gonna be breached because these devices you bought from them. So my recommendation, always try to relay in a very reliable, trustworthy supply chain or vendors. Okay, guys, so far so good. Any questions? Okay, so we take a break, like 15 minutes break, and then we'll come back again to explore the rest of the lecture today. So 10:20, we'll come back, right? And I will hope you guys enjoy the tea break. Have a great day. Okay, guys, shall I say welcome back, everyone?
Yes, welcome back, Mr. Shadi.
Maha, Fazan,
Yes, with you.
Style. You guys enjoyed the tea break?
Enjoyed the tea break. Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you
What
so
did you
much.
guys have in the tea break? Coffee,
Tea.
tea is good. Tea is good. It's light. I think coffee is a little bit, complicated now. They add so many things in the coffee. Sometimes I get like one cup of coffee and then I was like, my stomach is like, oh, what happened? So yeah.
Like the cool one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, the one that they selling it in like this
The
small
V60,
package.
you mean?
Yeah, they add caramels, they add, flavors, they add powder, sugar. There's like so many things.
But you should try cappuccino with extra caramel and cream. It's very delicious and like a meal also. You don't have it
Okay.
a lunch
Yeah,
after this.
I agree with with Ibtisam. Ibtisam is saying I think the powder milk is the issue. Is our stomach is not really able to handle this powder milk.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I would say the Turkish one, that's like the black coffee, that it doesn't have any extra, stuff
Yeah.
with milk and all this stuff. It's still very good. I enjoy a cup of coffee, mashallah. Okay, good that I thought that I'm the only one who has this issue, but apparently it's like a global issue.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, guys. So I will just go back to what we started in this conversation, which is basically your main job is to reduce the risk of data breach and disclosures. Okay, how you will be able to do this? I would just jump to this specific area, which is called layering protections. So you implement your protection as if you are building defense in depth strategy. Okay, and I will explain what is the defense in depth one more time, because this is also one of the concepts that I wanted you guys to always to be able to remember. I will give it a try, Ibtisam. So one of these things, which is basically defense in depth. What is the defense in depth? I will show you a diagram for what is the defense in depth. So I wanted you always to remember this diagram. So if you guys allow me to just jump from this page to this page. Okay, what we have here in this page is saying basically any IT system that we have maybe at home or maybe at any organization, it consists of layers. Okay, so a layer for network. Okay, and this is, let's say that you have a computer at home. Okay, these computers are somehow, whether wirelessly or wired, are connected to a wireless router, and this wireless router connects you to the internet. So you are really, as an IT system or a computers, you really has one component for networks. Okay, again, also if you go to an organization, you will find on their premises a server, and this server somehow is connected to a router, and this router is connected somehow to the internet. So this is going to be our internet. So every single IT system, let's say this is a web server, okay, consists, one of the component of the IT system is basically now is network. So this is one thing. Okay, guys. Another thing, which is basically important, is the hardware itself. They call it here mobile, but this is no wrong name. So here it means any IT system consists also of hardware, whether you have a desktop, okay, laptop, a mobile, tablet, is also, all of these guys are considered part of IT system. So our IT system consists of network, consists of hardware. On top of this hardware, we have an operating system, okay? And the operating systems, in a very simple way, without any complication, is a way that our application will be able to talk to the hardware. Okay, guys, I will just give you an example here. What is an operating system? Let's say that you have only Word, okay? Word. And now in your Word file, you really need to access a place in your hard drive. Okay, you know what you should do if you don't have an operating system? You should really write a small program that it is the hardware where exactly you wanted to save this file in the hard drive. Okay, so it will require from the end user to know how to deal with the hardware level, and something we call it back in the days the binary level, or even you know, there is a specific programming that it really deal with the hardware, which is called we have C language, and before the C language we have assembly language. Okay, so you need to really know how to deal with assembly language in order to really write something in the hard drive, or read something to hard drive, or maybe save a variable in the hard drive. Okay, so this is what require you to do. So the operating system is basically the interface between your application and your hardware. So the operating system is very important part. Without operating system, our life would be miserable. Okay, so the operating system also is part of your IT system. Your application, okay, sometimes they call the application the middleware, whether it's in a database or whether maybe as I give you, for example, a Word or Microsoft Office tools. Okay, so this is all the application. You have a web browsers. This is another application. Also, you need to understand, on top of your application, there is the data. What data? Okay, whatever you wrote in this Word file, whatever exists in this database, this is called your data. Okay, guys? So any IT system consists of all these components. You consist of hardware, operating system, application, and then data and network. Okay. Moreover, in any IT system, you have human also factor. These are the guy who's going to interact back and forth to the operating system, right? So someone is you sitting in your computer right now writing something, or maybe developing a Word file or an Excel file. So you are interacting. You're using this computer to add new data, and your application is capable to talk to the hardware over the operating system, and the operating system will allocate memory for you, will allocate CPU cycles, it will allocate for you a place in the hard drive to save, and then later on maybe you can send your file to one of your colleagues to work on this file across the world. Okay, guys, so this is any operating system like this. Okay, dealing with the kernel. Okay, so Naif is saying here the kernel. Kernel is basically the operating system. This is where you manage resources. This is where you manage resources of your computers. So your computers consists of CPU, you know, right? Some RAM, some hardware like keyboard, monitor, printer. So who is really coordinating all these resources and allocating memory and allocating CPUs is basically the kernel, okay? And the kernel also is the one that interface between every time you do something in the application and you wanted to access the hardware. So for example, when I open Zoom and I click the button of camera, okay, or the camera button, what happen is guys, the Zoom does not really knows which camera you have and what is really is how to turn it on or off, but it given instruction to the operating system, and the operating system later on goes and turn on the camera. So this is what happened exactly when you are dealing with kernel operating system. So my idea here, just to tell you guys, in order to implement layer protection, you need really to protect each one of these components. Each one of these components is very important to really protect. So let's say this, if you have a data in your database, would you like anyone to see your data who is in the database? No, you wanted to keep it confidential, right? Do you guys agree or no? You wanted to keep it integral. You wanted to keep it available, right? So you really need to implement here controls. Okay, so I will say here controls, and this controls will give me the the controls will give me confidentiality, integrity, and availability for my database. Okay, guys. For example, in order to do availability, I will need to back up this database. Okay. In order to do, for example, confidentiality, I need to encrypt this database. Okay. In order to do integrity, I will maybe really need to do hashing for the database, or maybe part of the password. I will do hashing for the password before it's saved in the database. Okay, guys. So all these controls need to implement it in the data level. How about the application level? Mean data, okay, that it exists in the database. It has some application called DBMs. DBMs, if you guys, I don't know if you have ever studied DBMs or relational database, okay? Exactly, it's database management system. The database management system is basically Microsoft SQL, you know, or Oracle, or maybe, you know, if you're using MySQL, okay, database, you have a web component that you can control the database. So this DBMs, guys, is end of day a software running, right? Or if you have Microsoft Office running here, or you have a web browser right here, you need also to implement controls to control confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Otherwise, you have an issue with your application. What happens is you cannot access the data anymore. And someone, maybe if he compromises your application, he will be able to reach your data. So this is also, you need to implement confidentiality, integrity, availability in the application level. Okay, so your web browser, you need to keep it available, you need to keep it confidential, you need to keep it integral. Okay, your Microsoft Office, you need to keep it also running. And that's why you really need, in this case, guys, to really need a vendor. Who is the vendor? And what kind of updates they are issuing for your application. So for example, Chrome, you have Chrome. Who is the vendor? Google, okay? How often they have issues? A lot, okay? So I need really to keep my, you know, Chrome updated. And the production skills, I agree with Naif. Naif basically saying, guys, here, is the vendor is responsible for the application updates, and really if the vendor is taking care of the development life cycling, which is CDLC, okay, and CLDC, which is basically secure development life cycle. If the vendor is really looking at development a secure application, it will make our life much better. Because if he giving you a not secure application, then you will have a vulnerability, and then someone can compromise your application. So you really need to really make sure that your application is also secure. Your operating system, you need to make sure your operating system also is secure. Okay, otherwise someone will compromise your operating system. And here, guys, look at this. One of the things that they're saying about database and application, make sure that you implement a proper access control and a proper permission. No one can access the application here, especially for DBMs. Okay, you need to access as an admin for the database. And the admin of database, they have a lot of permission to maybe insert or delete or maybe or even recreate databases. So make sure that quality and integrity of your database. So this is another also layer. Operating system, the same thing. Okay, you need, in order to secure your operating system, you need to implement credentials. No one can access your operating system except you. So you need to implement username and password. Okay, and even if you can, in a very secure environment, maybe you will follow a multi-factor authentication. So this is all in the operating system level. And even the hardware level, you need to keep your firmware updated. We just seen an attack for Cisco firmware. So the Cisco firmware for suspectable, and the firmware is just the hardware itself. There's a small software coming with this. And I showed you before an attack against AMD process and also Intel process. So this is a very well-known attacks. It's called tear down attacks. for meltdown attacks. Meltdown attacks. You can guys look it up on the online. It's very interesting how they managed to compromise how CPUs are working, and they giving a specific like a BIOS. Exactly. That's why there is some sort of secure BIOS. Okay, that you cannot really do anything about the BIOS content. So, but again, even the process, how it handled the information and the string that's coming to this process, you can exploit it. So this is the meltdown attacks. Okay, you need also to really secure your networks. So your network consists of network devices, like what we said, routers, switches, you know, hubs, firewalls. All this is need to be secure. Plus the TCP/IP protocol that you're using for as a protocol for communication, it needs to be secure in order to secure the network. So you need really, and here it's giving you an example. So let's say that you are sending your data to another device using the TCP/IP. Usually this data is being sent as a clear text. Clear text, that means anyone can really intercept the data and see the content of this data. So he's saying, let's implement something like a VPN, which is a protocol called IPsec, which is able to help us to really encrypt the data over this tunnel. And even if we have an attacker in between, will not be able to see the data. We can reset the BIOS password. Yes, this is how you bypass the BIOS password. I agree with you. Okay. Do you know why? Do you know what happened when we remove the battery? Okay, I will let you look it up. Okay, guys, and we need also to secure human with accessing this data. This is what we call in this layering protection. And this is, if you don't remember layering protection, remember defense in depth. And remember the castle that we wanted to protect. So we dug around the castles, like some, you know, water canal, and we only allow one bridge to come to this castle. So, and I will implement an archer here. So basically, in order to secure a network or a system, you need to implement security in every single level here. This is one way, okay, to look at things. The other way that I like to also to look at things, you need to implement controls, different controls, okay, for each one of these specifically areas. So, for example, I told you, we need to ensure confidentiality, integrity, but we need to implement preventive control, you know, detection controls, okay, and also, you know, correction controls. In each one, every single one of these layers, you need to implement all of them. So preventive control here, maybe like a firewall, detection control, like an IDS and IPS, correction controls. Maybe you have an incident response team. They would be able to really interact with any malicious and malicious network traffic. So this is preventive, okay? In the hardware level, okay, preventive control. No one can reach my hardware itself, okay? So this is kind of physically. But even if he reach, okay, he cannot move it from the desktop or move it from the disk. Detection controls, okay, camera system or whatever. In the operating system, you need to implement preventive control. So all this virus, antivirus, firewall that exists in your computer system, okay, it's all preventive control. Maybe you can implement a detection control here, like host-based intrusion detections. Maybe you can implement compensation controls if your operating system fails. How you can really, correct this operating system issues and install another operating system from an image. So you need to implement in each one of these layers all this preventive and control. So it's a bit complicated, but once you get to the concept, you will be doing it, you know, systematically. Okay, guys, so far so good. Any questions here about layering controls? Okay, one of the things in IT system, which is I wanted you guys to focus on here over here, is how end users are interacting with any computer system. And this is very important, okay? And I cannot talk enough. This is creating a lot of issues. Why? Guys, I'll tell you why, what happened recently. Okay, so these guys over there, they used to be in my organization, accessing my resources. Okay, I can see them. Okay, I can see them. I can reset their password. Okay, I can disable them very quickly. But what happened in the last few years, that we moved these systems to the cloud. Okay, look at what happened in the last few years. We moved this system to the cloud. Okay, and we had last couple of years Corona, or I don't know, COVID-19. Okay, so these users, they are not coming to the premises anymore, right? So this, I cannot really see these users, and I cannot see the data here in the cloud. Okay, so I really wanted to ensure identity and access management, and that's why the multi-factor authentication now is becoming no option, becoming mandatory, because I cannot see the users. They are sitting at home. How can I really tell that the person who is really accessing my resources is the person who is reclaiming to be? Okay, this is a really huge issue. So what happened is, recently, because the cloud computing and moving a lot of these resources, which is these resources, to the cloud, and because the users going back home, working from home, now even the gap for security is even bigger, because I cannot see the users and I cannot see my data. That's why you need to really implement security in a much greater way. One of the things that you really need to ensure, because of the last recent attacks and the last recent changing in technology, which is basically working from home and cloud, is to implement identity and access management. That's why we had already talked about identity and access management in maybe one lecture or two lectures just to talk about. And here, if you guys look at here in this diagram, it's saying once you are implementing your layer protection, the first thing you need to look at your identity and access management, and the third thing is patching and updating. Why? Because basically, where is my resources now? Okay, I have resources scattered all over the globe. Some of them in the cloud, some of them and basically in my premises. Where is my users? Some of them are working abroad, some of them working from home. Okay, so I need to really establish who's accessing, okay, these resources. So this is specifically two arrows over here saying who's accessing my resources. How can I ensure who's accessing my resources? Is basically is identity and access management. That's why it takes us to back over here. See, in protection, and this guy is over here. The first thing, okay, remember identity and access management and access control. Okay, this is the first thing that it's asking you. NIST is recommending you to really take care of it. Okay, because you really need to ensure who's accessing your data, who is having an authorization over your data, and if you can hold them accountable for this. And that's why I was once in an interview, and I had a debate with the manager, or like the hiring manager. So he said like, okay, if I give you one budget, I will give you maybe $1 million to implement one only security solution, okay, within our organization. Which one? He is convinced, okay, that because his users are sitting at home, so the most important thing is to implement EDR, which is a solution that I mentioned today, that it monitors what users are doing in their computer, even if they are away from your premises. So this is EDR, is not protection. EDR is detection solution. It's called EDR, okay? It's a detection and response solution. And he is telling me, okay, in the interview, this is the best solution for if you only give you the budget for only one solution. I said, no, this is not what, according to NIST, is not the most important one. Okay, the most important one is basically the identity and access management, because this is where it will prevent, you know, it will prevent the end users, okay, from accessing. It will prevent the attackers or hackers from accessing my resources. Okay, how when I can tell that someone from home is really his username and password is not compromised, and he's accessing my resources. ADR will not tell me. Like if you are detection anything malicious, yeah, it can tell you that it's something malicious, but it will allow this malicious thing to access my network and access my resources. The most important thing is to implement here is identity and access management. I wanted to really know. And let's say that's someone who is sitting in his computer and he's legit user and he's accessing resources in the network or the cloud, okay? And someone compromises username and password. If I implemented identity and access management and I implemented a proper multi-factor authentication, even if his username and password is compromised, you know, he will not be able to do anything because you need another factor of authentication. So he will not be able to compromise the resources. And I went on and with him, and he was like, no, EDR. I said, no, identity and access management. So it was like a little bit funny. Okay, great, guys. So I see Naif here is, mashallah, saying multi-factor authentication. So guys, here, this is identity and access management. Why it's important? Because it can establish your identity, okay? It can establish, identity can be established by so many ways, okay? User ID, email, name, you name it. There is so many ways to identify you. But the most important thing is to authenticate you, okay? So if you reclaim that you are Naif, okay, or maybe Ibtisam, or maybe Nasiba, how would I really know that you're really the person who is saying his username is blah, blah, blah? Is by authentication. Authentication in a very simple way, okay, is how to really prove your identity. Okay, when you go to basically the airport, okay, you can tell them, okay, that you are Nasiba or Naif, and you can show them your passport. Your passport here is your ID. Okay, what the officer will do is gonna authenticate you by his eyes. He's gonna look at your face and really look at your password and verify the pictures. Okay, if it's not clear, they will ask you to go and do retina scan to verify it's really you, because sometimes the pictures are old and we cannot really verify you. So this is also another way to verify. So the verification could be something you know, something you are, something you have. Okay, so after layering protection, we go to secure. Okay, we secured our infrastructure. We know our network is secure. We know our application is secure. We know our database is secure. Now, who can access these resources? So now we implemented the identity and access management, and the identity access management is implementing a very important methodology, which is IEEE. Naif is saying next they will implement a chip in our heads as a bio. It's already exists. It's not new. It's Elon Musk already working on it. So they have chips that is implemented in you, and it give you extra memory. This is what exactly they are doing right now. And I was reading an article about how the future wars will looks like. Okay, the future wars, let's say that I have a drone. Okay, I wanted this drone to kill people and doesn't kill people. So how can a drone, which is flying, okay, to recognize your army? So they said, okay, the next thing that we can do is implementing chips inside our army, soldiers. So the drone, when it's flying, okay, let's say you are fighting with face to face with your army. So now your drone can really recognize who is part of your army and who is part of the opponent army, because they don't have these chips. And these chips is a big thing now in the armies in the US and in Europe. So don't be surprised when you see someone with a chip recently. Okay. So again, guys, where we went from here is one way to authenticate you is also easy to really bypass, especially if it's a password. And that's why we moved from authentication using one password, or maybe even an OTP message comes to your computer, to multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication is basically using multiple techniques to authenticate you to the system, whether something you know and something you are, or wasn't something you are and something you have, and any combination of them. Some of the really, I would say, high profile application and some of really high profile buildings, they use all of them. So you need to know a PIN to enter from the door. You need to add a biometric, okay, and you need to scan your phone to prove who you are, or you will get a password. And I've seen some application, I told you some application, they are using the multi-factor authentication to authenticate user. Okay, guys? And once you are authenticated, as we mentioned before, that's also important, we need to move to another way of after authentication, you will move to authorization. So this is, again, remember, it's called the IAAA. IAAA is basically, once I authenticated a person, I really wanted to ensure, okay, I'm giving him the right permission. And the right permission should follow the principle of least privilege. Okay, I need to only give him the access or the permission to do exactly his work. Okay, and in a very simple way, authorization is about what should you be allowed to access, okay, within your organization or within the cloud if you are logging into cloud, or even within one computer if you are logged into a computer. Okay, can you see everything in a network or just certain computer or application? So this is another also way to define authorization. So what application are allowed to run in this computer? What application you are allowed to run on the network? What shares, like file shares, exist in the network that you can access? Like maybe you are working in sales team, so you can access only the sales folder. Okay, while you are working in sales, you cannot really access the marketing folder. So this is also the resources that exist in our network. What are you allowed to do? Example, what are you allowed to do? Are you allowed to install an application in your computer? Are you allowed to back up your computer? Are you allowed to run a scheduled task in your computers? So this is also really related to authorization. And this is, again, back to the least privilege. Give him the privilege that he can really do his job. So if he's an administrator or a backup administrator, give him a permission to do backups. If he and someone who is working in a help desk team, give him a permission to install application, and so on and so forth. Okay. What are your access rights permission? This is also related to authorization. And the access right permission is basically about file and folders, and it follow the methodology I told you about, access control methodology, which is discretionary access control, mandatory access control, and rule-based access control. Okay, guys, here the principle here that you need to remember: least privilege limits access based on need. Okay, there is another principle here they are using in some military and government institution, which is called needs to know. It comes with the least privilege, and the needs to know in a very simple way is basically say, okay, you maybe have an access, okay, to read a top secret file, but are you really need to read every single top secret file in the organization? No. You are working in the engineering department, so you only can read the top secret team messages or files for the engineering department. Okay, but we have also a top secret files for finance department. Okay, but you are working in engineering, you have the clearance, which is basically top secret, but you needs to know saying that you really doesn't have to do anything with finance. So you at that time least privilege and needs to know, you go hand on hand in this area. So there is another concept here called needs to know, need also to be implemented within the organization. If you're working in sales and you are the head of the department, you can manage to see everything in sales. Okay, but once you are not in sales, the needs to know saying, you know what, you don't really have to do anything with other files, so you are not allowed to see. Okay, guys, so far so good. Any questions? This is all, by the way, revision, recap, you call it anything. Okay. One thing also, guys, to really ensure system, IT system that consists of hardware, software is the concept of hardening. And hardening comes again from the word to make something hard, make something really withstand security attacks. Or it's hardening, we means in especially in cybersecurity, we mean that we're gonna make our attack surface small. Okay, so by disable service, by implementing more controls, by maybe disable ports in this computer, by maybe deleting some user which is used to access this computer before. So hardening the system means make it hard and reducing the attack surface. And this is also takes us to this diagram again. So a lot of engineers and a lot of cybersecurity engineers, they will try to come and harden their operating system. They wanted to see which service are running, which is not important, which user are accessing this system and they don't really need to access it, which application are running in this system and it's really not required to be running anymore. Okay, which data exists in this system and it's really doesn't really have to do anything with this system. So this is what we call the hardening. The less application running, the less service running in your operating system, the less users are accessing your operating system, it will narrow your attack surface and it will make it harder for the attacker to reach your system. So this is a concept that I wanted you guys to know about it. We already talked a bit about it a little bit before, but again, it was good to remind it. Okay, guys? So we will start to just giving you a review for what we studied last week as well, which is basically we talked about incidents. Okay, and what is the difference between incident and event? Okay, and what we really need to how to handle an incident and under which category of NIST core function we will be dealing with NIST with incidents. So if you guys allow me to go back to NIST over here, okay, and or if your attackers manage, yes. So so if the attacker manage here to really deceive one of your user inside or really manage to evade your protection techniques, you need at least to be able to detect. So detections of incidents is mandatory. Preventive is not mandatory, by the way. Why? Preventive can be easy after you implement a preventive control. Can someone bypass it? Okay. So they always say this rules in cybersecurity. Okay, if you cannot prevent, you at least can detect. So this is what the mentality here. Let's say that something happened in your network and you would be able to react and respond to this event in a quick way so it will not cause more impact on your business. So detection is very important, and this is where the incident response and where is the incident response and disaster recovery and business continuity are falling into this both category. So detect and something unusual happen, and once you detect something unusual happen, respond to this event. Okay, guys, or to this incident. So let's go and read this reminder here. Okay, no information assets. This is just telling you 100% fact. There's no 100% system. There's no one information system which is secure 100%. So whether you find a vulnerability in network, or whether you find a vulnerability in system, or whether you find vulnerabilities in application, is not secure. And also they always saying there is no silver bullet for information security. You cannot get any solution that's gonna solve all the security issues in your system. So there is always a chance that attacker take over your system. Okay. The incident will occur, and organization must respond to this incident as part of due care and due diligence. Okay, what is a due care and due diligence? I have mentioned this before, and this is also important thing to remember, which is basically when an incident happens, you need really to deal with it, because if you don't deal with it in a proper way, there is some fines and some obligation in you that can lead, okay, to take you to pay a lot of fines. So let's say that someone, an incident happened, okay, like a fire, okay, And this fire started to spread in your building because you basically never called the police on time or the firefighter on time, never used any firefighter extinguishers here, okay? You didn't take a proper action before this to protect your building from fires, okay? So now you can be held guilty in front of the laws and eyes of the court. Why? Because you know there is a possibility of fire. You never do anything to protect your building in the fire, and you acting very slow when the fire happened. So now in front of laws, you are careless. You didn't really take things serious, and you really pose a dangerous to your organization and to people who is within your organization. Same way, if you have data of your clients and you never practice any good practice to protect your data, okay, and then someone breach your data, so an incident happened and cause an impact to a customer, then now the new laws on the US and Europe specifically, they can hold you as a CEO or the board of directory accountable for this. They can say, you know what, you failed to protect and practice a good sound methodology to protect the data. Now you need to pay fines, and now some of these really strict laws can take the CEOs and the CFOs to the jail. Okay, exactly. So now you find that a lot of the CEOs and a lot of the C-suits, we call them, they will act really, they will show due care to protect the information asset because they know now they can be held accountable for not protecting this data and can go to a jail because of this. Okay, guys? So this is part of due care and due diligence. Okay? Let's just go and try to give you a little bit also a difference between event and incident. So the Computer Security Resources Center, CRC, is a national institutions of standard, okay, and technology, NIST, define both event and incident in a special publication called 861. If you guys never heard about 861, it is specific publication from NIST, and we mentioned that NIST is really great when it comes to up with a new standard. And this specific publication, which is 861, is only a publication for how to handle security incident. Okay, and in this guide or this documentation, they will tell you there is a difference between event and incident. So the event is simply as any observable occurrence in a system or network. Anything we observe is just gonna be an event. I will give you an example so it will be clear. Someone logged to his machine. When he logs to machine, there is a log saying successfully logged into his machine. And this is a log file saying that Hamad Naif logged to this machine and he managed to log in. Success. This is an event. This is anything we observe, like a log, okay? For something happening in our system or networks, we consider an event. Okay, how about the event, incident? It's just a violation, okay? Or a threat of violation of computer system security policy, acceptable use policy, or a standard security practice. What we mean by this, let's look at the same exact login example, okay? So you have someone is basically trying username and password, trying username and password, trying username and password, okay, until his account logged. So his account now logged, means he cannot log to the system. Now this is an event. Until what? Okay, until you go verify who was trying to log in. Okay, if it is your user and he forget his password, this is still an event. Okay, because it's not violating. But this is if once we find that was someone, a threat from outside the organization, or someone malicious was trying to really hack to your computers, this is now an incident. Okay, guys. So do we understand now what is the difference between event? So anything that's happening in your network in general is just event. Okay, any observable occurrence on any observable actions. Okay, happen. So this is just an event. When we have someone really violating our computer confidentiality, integrity, availability, this is gonna be an incident. So for example, someone started to really launch a denial of service attack against this computer until this computer is not available. So this is an incident. Why? Because it violated my computer security practice. So my computer is not available anymore. Let's say that someone managed to access one of these files and delete this file. Okay, and he was not supposed to delete this file. So deleting the file is an incident because now my files are not available anymore. So this is a really compromise. Someone accessed a database and he was not supposed to see the database. So this is a compromise, an incident because it's compromised the confidentiality of my systems. Okay, guys? And that's why he's here is saying that incident is any violation of your organization security policy or products to compromise or attempt to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your information. Okay, guys. So now we understand what is the difference between incident and events so far. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Just let me go and tell you. This is all examples of incidents. We have already talked about some of them: denial of service, any insider threats, okay, any negligence, any distributed denial of service attacks, any hacking for thrill. All of these are considered an incidents, okay? And it will require you to react. Okay, state actors is there. Okay, here, look, you have criminal activity, okay? And the criminal activity to do data theft, okay, or loss of data trade sectors. So trade secrets, it's basically a criminal activity by nation states. Yani, if you guys wanted to really read an interesting story about how the Chinese, they hacked into a lot of technology companies in the US. Just come here online and just go to a Google search. Let me show you a very interesting topic, like article, saying how the Chinese espionage. So espionage operation against the US. Okay, guys. This is basically saying that since 2000, okay, 2000, and China is basically hacking a lot of American US companies, especially the one that actually work in the air fighter manufacturing, okay, and basically this specific espionage, it costs the US around $500 billion. So this is crazy amount of money. Okay, if you really wanted a very nice story to read, is look at this specifically. And طبعا for sure, they are also United States firms and nation states, they are hacking also Chinese company. So it's like not only the Chinese is hacking American, it's also vice versa. So this is, you find a lot of testimonies, and even here Barack Obama, one of the main reasons that they are developed the NIST framework is in the Barack Obama administration time. There was so many attacks coming from China. They started really to hurt the critical infrastructure in the US, and that's why Barack Obama said, okay, I wanted a framework for cybersecurity, and that's why NIST, the one that I'm explaining to you almost every lectures, is coming from. So this is a very here it's even saying nuclear espionage. So they even hacked the nuclear facility of the US. Okay, guys. Okay. Here. I have read this here. Okay, it's already here, guys. A safety and security. So Naif is saying, does reverse engineering considered as safety and security? Well, depends about what you're gonna do with reverse engineering. So reverse engineering, basically, if you wanted to return, let's say, a product to the original component that it made out of it, okay, in order to really make a similar component, this is this is considered a theft or trade secret theft, because you're not supposed to do the reverse engineering. You need to really to buy the product, because the guy who created this product in the early beginning, he have something called copyrights. He already exerted a lot of effort to do this. So you cannot just come I remember a joke about three guys. They are they go in France and they stand in front of Louis Vuitton. So one of these guys are Chinese, you know, one of them are Indian, and I think the last one is like another nationality or African nationality. So the African nationality, you know, they will go and look at Louis Vuitton or Louis Vuitton bags, and he doesn't care about it. He's like, a bag for 5,000. He will not even enter this shop. But the Indian are very curious, so they will enter the shop and say, "What is Louis Vuitton? What is Louis Vuitton?" So they wanted really to understand what is Louis Vuitton, you know, is all about. They're not gonna buy anything also, but they're just curious to know what is Louis. So one of them is not curious at all. One of them really is curious, so they go inside and they ask, but they never buy anything. And then they said that the Chinese guy, they go inside and they take picture of everything. They don't buy anything as well. And then they go back to China and Korea, and they send these pictures to someone in Hong Kong or in Dubai, and they ask them to make a copy of these pictures. So this is exactly an easy reverse engineering, okay? But again, especially in software, the reverse engineering is very common. They go back to look at the source code. Okay, you can look back in the source code to verify if the source code is secure, because most of our code that we use right now is closed sources. They don't allow you. But if you go back to the source code, okay, and you copy this source code and start to use the source code to create similar application, this is called copyright violation, or even they called it also trade secret theft or theft. Okay, so this is another way to look at it. Over here, this is it's giving you some symbols of attacks. The Justice Department has declared that China's espionage activities are so wide in the scale that they constitute a national security emergency. So they are really in a great, it makes US economy in a great danger, as China targets almost every sector in the US business. So this is, I would say, you know, it's back and forth. It's between China, because China also is very advanced in some certain technology. So it is back and forth. So Chinese can say that American firms or American national states also is hacking us. Okay, according to 60 Minutes, this is a well-known program in the US. If you guys never seen it, it's interesting. Sometimes they actually, invited Arab people to talk on this. They invited, I think, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid once to talk about his horses. So it's very common one. So this activity is costing US companies hundreds of billions of dollars in losses and more than 2 million jobs. So this is just by hacking activity, okay, and espionage, okay? Center of Strategic and International Studies estimated the likely annual cost of cyber crimes and economic espionage to the world economy at more than $500 billion. Almost 1% of the global income is because they are losses because of the cybersecurity crimes. Okay, CS estimated that the United States lost around 100 billion only in 2013 because of cyber crimes or because of cyber espionage. So incidents are really crazy when it comes again to how much loss. Okay, so loss is not always feasible. Here what is saying, guys, in a very simple way, that when you see an incident, you see at least this is they call it the iceberg, and the iceberg they always saying that there is also a lot is hidden in the under the ocean, more than what you see in the top. So in the top, you see there is some technical investigation happening. You see customer breach notification in the news. You see regulation compliance come into the picture. Okay, you see some lawyers are taking some fees from the company to defend the company in the court of law. You feel also post-breach customer protection. So this is basically a program that companies are doing to really compensate people who is going breached. A public relationship, you have to get the media also to talk about you in a better way because you already been breached. Okay, cybersecurity improvement, you need to spend a lot to really improve your cybersecurity posture or countermeasure. So this is only from the top, but the bottom it also you are incurred a lot of losses. So here it's saying, you know what, you have to pay more insurance premium. So if you used to pay maybe 100 million as an insurance for your cybersecurity, now after a breach, okay, because you are gonna get from the insurance company a little bit money because you were insured a lot of your activity to them. Now you need to really pay more premium to get any insurance, and not all the companies will give you insurance because you basically they know that your security controls are not well. So this is you have to pay more premium, increase cost to raise debt. So if you are really taking some debts from banks, now banks will be more careful to give you more debts because basically they don't know if you're gonna go out of business next time you've been breached. Impact of operational disruption or destruction mean the day-to-day operation because your system has been compromised. Okay, it's gonna impact your performance. It's gonna impact your company to reach their objective because you have a major disruption. Okay, value of lost contract revenue means if you were a very well-known company that's promoting itself as a world leader in this place, you're not gonna get new contract because you just been breached and someone steal your data, so you're losing intangible assets here, which is basically the customer confidence in you. Okay, loss of intellectual property. Maybe this attack leads that you lost some of your trade secrets or very important software that you developed. So this is also really gonna impact your business because now the attacker can make extra copy of this data or maybe design like a mobile that you used also to produce, and now he can compete with you in the market. Lost value of customer relationship. Basically, your customer now are not confident anymore, and this is also an intangible. So what they're saying here in a very nutshell in this diagram, that's every incident happen to your company, it will cost you some amount of money when it comes to that's obvious that you need now because you are basically breach. So you need to spend more in security. You need to spend more in the public relationship to talk positively about your company. You need to spend some amount of money on the legal cases that's going to be against you in the in the court. You need to pay fines. So this is only the what we can see from outside, but what we don't see is how your customer look at you. Okay, how confident are you in your service? Okay, what is the potentially of you getting new customers? So this is all implication of an incident. And that's why you really need to handle an incident, or you really need to make sure that to prevent the incident before it becomes public and it causes you a lot of troubles and a lot of impact. Okay, guys? So this is what he really means by this. So far, so good? Okay, this is just all of what we have mentioned before. Okay, this was basically, I was covering what we have already talked about before. I didn't add anything new. It just was good to do a quick revision for what we have talked about the last few weeks. Okay, we mentioned that one of the things that you really need to activate once you have an incident is incident response. Okay, and an integral part of incident response called something we call it digital forensics. And we already explained what is digital forensics is all about. I mentioned to you guys in a very simple way, digital forensics is a science to really extract or to collect evidence from devices that's been part of a cybercrime. So this is in a very simple way. You need to really identify which evidence you need to collect. You need to collect this evidence. You need to make sure to analyze this evidence. You need to make sure that you write a nice report about this evidence. You need also to, exactly like Naif said, autopsy is one of the tools. And lastly, you need to testify in the court of law when you are being called as an expert in this field to talk about your collection. So this is what is digital forensics. And both of them, okay, part of incident response. So both of them are integral part. So you can, and even we talked last time that incidents and digital forensics, they have some common area, like in the first early beginning when you do incident identification, you have in incident response a stage called incident identification, and you have also in digital forensics a stage called incident identification. So this is where you verify it's a real incident or no. Okay, if it's a real incident, what should I supposed to do next? And in IR, guys, or incident response, we need to do identification. Once we finish with identification, there is a stage called containment, and containment means I wanted to limit the damage for this incident on my organization. So I wanted to limit the impact, because you know, if we have a big impact, that we really gonna lose more money and we're gonna spend more money to recover our system to a normal operation. Once we containment finish, we have a stage called eradications. Mean eradication, you get rid of the main source code of these issues. So we mentioned in this case specifically, or in this stage specifically, we mentioned that we need to implement something called root cause analysis. Root cause analysis is all about that you try to find what is the main cause of this incident. Okay, you don't just try to recover the system without finding the root cause and try to eradicate it or get rid of it. Okay, so this is eradication, guys. Once you did eradication, what you're gonna do next is basically try to recover the system to the normal operation. Okay, so this is the stages of incident response. We talked about these stages in a very deep details, I think last Wednesday, and I told you incident response is also part of a huge plan called business contingency. Business contingency, BC. Okay, so if you can see the connection here, the business contingency is a bigger plan. Incident response is part of it. Integral part of incident response is digital forensics. So they are all related. And all of these plans, it requires you to prepare and plan ahead. So you really need to prepare and plan ahead before this is happening. Why? Because I'm telling you, if you are in, God forbid, you have a fire, okay? If you never prepared your fire, if you never prepared your building for a fire, what happened in the fire, when the fire break into your building, it will be a chaos. People will not know where to go, okay? You will lose more assets, and even it can lead to a human life loss, because you never practice anything to really to prepare against an incident like a fire. Again, the same thing with our computer system. If we never prepare for an incident, when the incident takes place, because we don't have a proper stages, a proper team to handle the incident, it will be a chaos, and we're gonna also lose a lot of very important assets, and we can cause more damage to our organization, to the point that there is some basically researchers saying up to 40% of the company, they have a major incident, they go out of business. Okay, guys, so it's important really to handle the incidents in a professional way, and to really prepare for incidents before the incident takes place. So this is all we talked about it in incident response. What we also mentioned that digital forensics is also a process, and this is the process of identification. Okay, so we need to identify